Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode, our last 2017 episode of Bariatric Foodie Live. I am Nick, and this is my incomparable co-host, Shannon.
Hi, guys and
Shannon,
gals.
we made it to the end of 2017. Did you now tell the truth? Did you think that this show was going to like implode at any point?
There may have been a time or two that
Oh, yeah.
um
I was
that
like, there's been some days, like, guys, you just don't know. There's been some days, and be sure to say hi as you're coming in and let us know where you're watching from. But yeah, there were some days, like, there's definitely been a lot of days where we get to Thursday and we're like, crap, what are we talking about?
right?
It's Thursday. There's been some days where I really didn't even know it was Thursday. I was like, wait, it's Thursday? And you had to remind me, like, yeah,
What are we doing? What are we
it's
doing?
Thursday. What are we talking about? Sometimes it'll be like Thursday and it'll be like 6:45 p.m. And Shannon's like, Nikki,
Yeah. What you got for
hi.
me? Yeah, like
What's up, girl?
yeah, I
What
know.
you doing?
Mhm. I'm sitting over here like,
Like, look, bag nabbit. I'm gonna start charging her a fee. But but
exactly.
But anyway, we are, as always, sponsored by bariatricpal.com, where I hope you did a lot of your holiday shopping because they are your one-stop shop for bariatric stuff. It's like the Amazon bariatrics. They have all your favorite brands, including what I'm sipping on. Well, I think they have they have the BiPro protein waters. I'm not sure if they have the lemon with the caffeine or whatever.
Right.
Protein waters, but they do have the BiPro protein waters and a bunch of other things. They're always having a sale. You earn up points for every dollar you spend. You earn rewards for referring a friend, special discounts, free shipping, the whole nine. So do your comparison shopping and be sure to include bariatricpal.com in those comparisons. One more shameless self promo before we hop into our subject matter for tonight, which is a lot. But I wanted to just remind you guys that you guys can subscribe to get Bariatric Foodie Live updates by going to bariatricfoodie.com/live. And we will send you an email every single week about what the show is about, so you can decide whether it is worth your hard-earned 30 to 65 minutes. So just wanted to sort of throw that in there. So we always open up the show with burning questions. The way our dashboard is, I have to sort of scroll down to see comments. So let me see if any comments or anything have come in or anything that we need to respond to. Let's see. Let's see. Hi, Julie. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Christina. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Liz. Hi, Ruth. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Linda. Hi, Christina, who is spending the holiday with the kids and her grandkids in Dover, Delaware, which really isn't that far from me. I think Dover is really only like about 45, 50 minutes away from me. I'll wave to you like, hi from Baltimore. Hi, Margaret. I'm going to stop doing the person by person highs because we will never get through the show this way. But I love you all. If you have any burning questions, especially because this is our last show of the year, if there's anything that you've gone through this year, like your face freezing on Facebook Live constantly, if there's anything that you've gone through this year, anything that you're experiencing, anything you're wondering whether or not it's normal, if you'd like to get the opinion of other post-ops, we're not the only ones who answer these questions. A lot of times the fellow people who are watching will answer and chime in with their experiences too. So you get the benefit of everybody who is watching answering your questions. So just throw it out there. We're gonna proceed on with the show, but if you have a question at any time, throw it in there. We will get to it. So we only really have one real agenda item tonight, and Shannon's like Shannon gets like a little break because her main job is to nod emphatically through this. Let's see your emphatic and caring nod. You got no. You got to put a little bit more of it.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
You got to do like the straight, like. There you go. You're ready.
I'm ready.
You're ready.
Let's do it.
Our main agenda item tonight is what I'm going to call Nick's Year in Review. And it was important for me to do this because this year has been something of a trip for me, guys. And I am generally a pretty upbeat person. I'm usually, pretty positive. Behind the scenes, sometimes things are going on in my life that are just generally hard. I am not immune to hard things happening in my life. I'm not immune to curveballs. Some of you who know me better than others, just that, sometimes I'm a little bit of a hot mess myself. But the thing about it is that I don't advertise myself to be a bariatric guru. I'm not a fitness guru. I'm not a mental guru. I am a post-op. I'm coming up on 10 years post-op. And my main thing that I push is that we are worth the hard work that we go through in this process. We are worth learning how to eat well again. We are worth battling our mental demons and slaying the dragons. We are worth, establishing new routines and working goals until they're just absolutely tedious and you just want to, kick something because you're tired of like doing that repetitiveness every single day. That you are worth that. Your health is worth that, and you are worth that. So once I sort of embraced that fact, I stopped being afraid to talk about my struggles so much in front of you guys because of the fact that I'm not even advertising. And Margaret, I saw you had a question. I'm going to come back to it in a second. I'm not even advertising myself as perfect. And so I wanted to share with you my year in review, not only as sort of a catharsis for me and a way for me to express what's been going on and hold myself accountable to making changes in my life, but also because I see a lot of you guys wondering whether or not you should be struggling, whether it's okay, whether your failure is because you struggle. And things like that. And I just really want to be very open and honest about the processes that I go through. And that's what Bariatric Foodie is all about to me, is, sharing the processes that I go through so that that at least one other person is going through this kind of stuff and that it's okay and that we keep moving forward. So let's talk about, there's sort of three parts of how I've broken this up. Channing, emphatic nod. Okay. So the first part is what exactly was going on with Nikki this year that was so rough. The second part is how did that affect me? So the what, how did that affect me? And then the third thing is how am I going to move forward from this year into next year? Because I very much want next year to be a stronger year in my life. So let's dive in by just talking about a couple of the things that challenged me this year. So number one, and Shannon has heard about this one ad nauseum. Anybody who knows me has heard about this ad nauseum. I've talked about it a little bit on Bariatric Foodie, but not in as much detail. So I'm going to go through the story, but it's not going to take a super long time, but I'm going to go through this story. But the battle of the boob. So as you guys know, because I mention it a lot, and I mention it a lot, not because I'm not trying to garner sympathy or any sort of bonus points, but because in being diagnosed with breast cancer, I realized that my story very easily could have been very different if I hadn't stayed on top of my health and if I hadn't persisted when I noticed that something wasn't right. And I would venture to guess that a lot of women sort of have the desire to bury their heads in the sand when they believe something might be wrong, but it's so important that you don't. So I want to talk about it until I've run breast cancer into the ground, because if that makes you guys get your mammograms and check out things that are wrong and things that just don't quite feel right, then I feel like it is a good investment that I've gotten on all of your last nerves talking about breast cancer. So 2016 was that year. It was my diagnosis. The first half of last year was all about me getting diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016. The second half of 2016 was all about recovering from my mastectomy. 2017 was what I called the Battle of the Boob. What happened was that at the time I had a bilateral mastectomy. I had cancer in my right breast. However, I had what's called a prophylactic bilateral mastectomy. Prophylactic, of course, meaning that they removed my left breast as well as my right breast because they wanted to make good and sure that the cancer does not come back. At this point, I have like a 2% chance of recurrence, which, I like those odds a lot better than the alternative. So at the time of my surgery, I was able to have my left breast reconstructed. The right breast, there was too much tissue that they had to remove because of the mass that they took out from the cancer and from the fact they had to take out all of that tissue to make sure that the cancer doesn't come back. So they put in something called a tissue expander. And I have whined and moaned and bitched about this tissue expander for the greater part of this year, because if you can imagine, like, if you guys have kids and you've ever been to and Shannon, you have small kids, if you've ever been to Chuck E. Cheese, that's how I explain to people what the tissue expander feels like. If you've ever been to Chuck E. Cheese and you've seen that ball pit, I think they eliminated the ball pit because it's like a germ cesspool. But anyway, back in the day when they had the ball pit, those really hard balls in the ball pit, just make it about the size of a grapefruit, that hard ball, tack it to your chest, and put a layer of muscle and skin over it. And that was my life for all of this year and half of last year. And so what happened was that my original, in the original diagnosis process, I got referred to a reconstructive surgeon. And he's a very sweet man. However, and I get the sense that this might be a thing with plastic surgeons, is that they don't predominantly bill through insurance. You know what I mean? So it's like, his staff wasn't the most familiar with insurance paperwork. And so they submitted my insurance. They thought that it came back with an approval for them to go ahead and operate, and they would pay my surgeon. But really what my insurance did was they sent a really ambiguous letter that even fooled me. It basically said that the procedure that I was having was covered. However, the payment to the surgeon was pending whether or not he was in network or not. And he wasn't. So about a couple of weeks after my mastectomy, while I'm still on medical leave and everything, I get a lovely bill for $25,000. Can you imagine, Shannon, imagine getting a bill. I nearly fell out and had a heart attack. So long story short, they made a mistake. They compensated for it with that surgery by reducing the cost of my surgery to the amount of my deductible. But through some shenanigans with his staff, it became apparent that nobody was communicating that to my surgeon. And when my surgeon finally found out what happened, nice man though he was not willing to discount my follow-up surgery. He said, I just can't afford to do that. And so he encouraged me to find a surgeon on my network. Well, let's talk about how hard it is to get a plastic surgeon to take over for another plastic surgeon's work. It's not easy at all. I went through one doctor that wasn't accepting new patients. One turned me down flat. The third one, I thought there was real potential there. We met, we clicked, it was nice. It was interesting because each time I had requested my whole medical file, I would go to these offices with my whole medical file and they would look through it. And this doctor spent the most time with me out of everybody, and asked a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to, like, why did the surgeon do this surgery this way, and da-da-da-da-da. It was basically his opinion that he wouldn't have reconstructed anything until he could have reconstructed everything. So, that's nice, but here we are. I need this fixed. Because tissue expanders, they can stay in for a while, but they just get uncomfortable. It was stretching the muscles in my right arm. My right arm got really weak. It just stopped working at intervals and things like that. So it was just really frustrating to me because I couldn't do some of the things that I used to be able to do. My range of motion was really, really bad. At the end there, I couldn't really lift my arm over my head and reach for things. I couldn't extend my arm to reach for things. I couldn't reach behind myself. Those were just movements that I couldn't do because of the tissue expander. And so we had talked back and forth. So then he goes back, but I'm very hopeful that he's going to say, yes, I'm going to take your case, right? Well, he comes back to me, and by this time it's like mid 2017. So I've been through the rigmarole of getting the $25,000 bill, getting it reduced, getting fired by my first surgeon, progressively seeing the right side of my body get weaker and weaker and weaker, going through weeks and weeks and weeks of not great sleep. Imagine sleeping, trying to sleep on or leaning on that Nerf ball. It just was not a good setup. All of that only to be told by and there was only 3 surgeons. I think I forgot to mention that there were only 3 surgeons who were on my network who specialized in breast reconstruction after mastectomy. And this is the last one. And I thought he was going to say yes. And in the middle of the year, he came back and he said, "You're too big of a risk. I can't do it. I would recommend that you go back to your regular surgeon." And so, like I said, I get a little bit choked up when I talk about this, but basically what that meant was that I was about to get tied into having to pay $25,000 to get my right side reconstructed. That's a good emphatic face, Shannon. But so it was an emotionally trying time for me, guys. It was like I felt like I was being punished for getting breast cancer. I felt really stupid because I felt like I should have read the paperwork better. I should have understood the paperwork better. Throughout this, one of my saving graces was that I had a really, really good patient advocate through my job's employee assistance plan. If you have an employee assistance plan, use it, guys. It is a godsend. So this lady fought so hard for me every step of the way. I called her right after I got that $25,000 bill, and she's been with me throughout the whole thing. And so, that was my saving grace, because she would always have some other little avenue that we could try or go down and things like that. But then, once they basically closed the door on the surgeon that was in network, I didn't really know what I was going to do. Because as you'll see in some of the other items that I mentioned, my life was going through a lot of changes in 2017. So I was genuinely scared that I wasn't going to be able to complete this reconstructive surgery. So I'm happy to report, though, that my general breast surgeon, the cancer breast surgeon, because there's 2 types of surgeons involved in a mastectomy. There's a general breast surgeon who specializes in your breast tissue and the cancer and taking all of that out. And that's the person who monitors you for the rest of your life. And then there's the reconstructive surgeon. I go to see my general breast surgeon every 6 months. And so I went to go see him for my 6-month follow-up in October. And, his job is to sort of monitor me. There's ways that you monitor people who have had a double mastectomy, because I still do have to be screened for cancer. It's just they can't do it through a mastectomy anymore. So he's like poking around. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, do you still have that expander in? And I was, oh, don't get me started on that story. So I tell him the whole sordid story. So he asks me, what is the name of the surgeon that you've been talking to? So I tell him the surgeon's name, and he goes, oh, I know him. I'm going to call him. And so, of course, everything had been in such circles that I was like, I wasn't even getting my hopes up, Shannon. I was like, man, whatever. You call him, you're very kind to call him, but I don't know that that's going to do anything any good, but you go ahead and try. And I don't know what my general surgeon said to that man, but 2 days later, he calls me back and he says, I will take your case. And that was like the happy dance moment of my life. And that is why on December 14th, just 9 days before Christmas, I underwent the second part of my reconstructive surgery. I may not be 100% finished with surgery, but I'll talk about that later. But it was just like that moment where it was just like, okay, things may just get better. So that is the battle of the boob. That was a really big thing that was going on in my life last year. The second thing I wanted to point out was, for those of you who have followed Bariatric Foodie for years and years and years. How many years Bariatric Foodie? I think 9 years. I think I was like a year post-op when I started Bariatric Foodie. Anyway, my mother passed away in 2012. And it's interesting because when you have somebody that important in your life pass away, it never really, milestones really do get to you, but it's like sort of this undercurrent, this hum of a void in your life. But then when you get to a milestone, you're like, holy crap. Like, it's been 5 years. And so that sort of hit me like a whammy. She died on March the 29th, 2012. And it just coping with that and trying to cope with everything that I was going through. It's interesting because my mom died from complications of diabetes. She's 58 years old, but her mom died of breast cancer. And so it was like, this whole, I felt all at once, I felt very connected to my grandmother, who I didn't know very well. She died when I was 4. But at the same time, really, really scared because I saw what happened to her. She got cancer once. It went into remission. It came back and it metastasized. And she went through a lot, and it really scarred my mom badly for the rest of her life. And so it was like, those thoughts, and not having my mom around with me through that whole process to tell me how it went for her mother, or to reassure me, or even to just say, babe, mama's here, was really, really hard. And so as I was dealing with all of that stuff with the reconstruction, and then dealing with the 5-year anniversary of my mom's death, it was like this sort of this. But then, sort of on top of that, we had number 3, which was general post-cancer fallout. Guys, I have a tendency to joke on my personal timeline that I only got little baby cancer, because I was diagnosed at stage 0. Stage 0 basically means that the cancer was localized in my milk duct, and they were able to get it from there. And it has the best prognosis. I didn't have to undergo chemotherapy. I didn't have to undergo any radiation or hormone therapy. So I consider myself very fortunate for that. However, I really wasn't honoring the fact that I had cancer. And that scared, cover the kids' ears, people. That scared the shit out of me. It was like, especially coming from a place where my grandmother died at 49 years old from breast cancer, and I had breast cancer. And so, that general just sort of reckoning with that in my mind was just a big deal this year. I think last year I sort of pushed through because I was in sort of survival mode and having the mastectomy, and I'm going to recover, and I'm going to go back to work, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be strong, and I'm a fighter and all this good stuff. But it's like, stuff like that sneaks up on you sort of in those moments when you're alone in a quiet room and you're not really doing anything. And, you have this sort of little voice whispering in your head, like, you could have died. Like, this could have gone a different way and you could have died. And so, just that fallout and grappling with that and learning how to deal with that and where to put that and how to talk about it without, scaring myself, how to talk about it with people that I trust. And things like that, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the last thing that was going on in my life, which was another reason why it was a good thing, but it was also a little bit stressful because I felt like this was not the year for me to have a complete nervous breakdown. I mean, really, whenever is it? It's like, maybe 2019 would be a good year to have a nervous breakdown. But still, this especially wasn't the year, was that my baby graduated high school and went to college. And it was a good thing in that, I was very, very proud of her. She graduated from arguably one of the best high schools in the nation and one of the best high schools in Baltimore. She got accepted to a private college here in Maryland. I'm just proud of her beyond words. But also, it's a big adjustment. It was an adjustment for me. She goes to school far enough away where she lives on campus. So we dropped her off on campus. I have to, get used to not living with my child after I've lived with her for 18 years, not talking to her as often, for her to have friends that I don't know about and a social life that I don't know about and things like that. So on the one hand, it was like not the time to crack up. But then on the other hand, it was the time to crack up because I remember when I went to college, my mother convened this whole support group in the parking lot of my dorm room, and all of the mothers cried together. So it's one of those things where I'm just I'm supposed to be emotional, but it was it's one of those things where if I let the floodgates of one area of emotion come out, I felt like I was going to lose control over all of the emotions. And so, it was one of those things where I fought really, really hard to keep it together. So those were the main things that sort of affected my life last year. Now, how did that shake out for me on a day-to-day basis on how I lived? And please chime in if you've experienced any of what I've experienced. I see a couple of you have chimed in already. And let me know if any of the after effects of things that you've dealt with, how you've dealt with them. I am taking advice because some of this stuff is really new to me, and I don't know how to deal with some of it. One of the after effects of all of that stuff happening in my life this year, which is totally foreign to me, was that I had lots of anxiety. I did not I tell the story of, and for all intents and purposes, on the morning of my mastectomy, I had a full-on panic attack. That was the first time I'd ever had a panic attack in my life. But then like the anxiety was one of those things that was a little bit quieter, crept up on me. Now, I've been a single mother almost the entire time I've been a parent. I've hustled. I've, had, those, pay one bill to not pay another bill, and, sort of trying to beat the light bill guy to the payment office sort of thing. So it's not like I've led a stress-free life up to this point. My life has always been sort of pretty high stress, high demand, but the addition of the anxiety meant that even the littlest things paralyzed me. It was just like this. Anytime I committed to anything, it paralyzed me. Anytime I said I wanted to do something or accomplish something, it paralyzed me. Anytime I gave myself any sort of deadlines, it paralyzed me. It was stress in my chest, in my head, in my breathing, and it was just horrible. Have you ever experienced like bad anxiety like that, Shannon?
Yeah.
And so it's like one of those things. And I had never had that before. It was like really and truly a very foreign thing to me, because usually I just sort of push it down and deal. But I think that the threshold of me pushing it down and dealing had been met, and there wasn't really anything else to do but face whatever that anxiety head on. So from the anxiety, we had good old depression and fatigue. And those things really bit me in the butt, and particularly affected me because I had these moments where I wanted to do things for myself so badly. I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to go on a walk. And interestingly enough, I was talking to Shannon before we started the show. I keep a journal, and I would notice that when I would be in my plunging mood things, that was when I was most likely to just not have been active at all. I wasn't taking walks. I wasn't doing anything. I was basically getting up, going to work, coming home, going to bed. And then the times where I would experience a lift, I would mention in my diary, and I didn't make any correlation until afterwards, but that, I had taken a walk. I walked a mile, or I walked 2 miles, or I'd done something good for myself that day, and particularly something physical. So that depression, fatigue, like anxiety ball, it's like sort of this self-propelling thing that just sort of affected my life. And I just talked about this, but we'll just show this anyway. I pulled back from physical activity a lot. Part of that was out of necessity, because part of what I loved to do was weightlifting and things like that. And with my right arm being so weak from the tissue expander, I simply could not do it. There was like times, like I said, after a while of working my arm would just cease to work. It would not lift, it would not anything. So I tried to sort of conserve my arm strength for, essential things like, driving, brushing my teeth. My right side is my dominant side. So it was like a little bit tricky sort of trying to manage that so I could still do the things that I needed to do. But I pulled way back from physical activity. For a while, I wasn't walking. I wasn't going to the Y. People at the Y forgot what I looked like. It was like all the same staff were there when I went back. And they were like, I think I remember you from like many months ago. But I don't really know. So it was like one of those things. And that was particularly scarring because that physical aspect was a big part of my identity for the first few years after I had surgery. I was that person who went to the gym. I was that person who worked out for the first 2 years after my surgery. I was that person who lifted the weights, who who you know, did the classes and did spin and was, you know, got up at 5:45 a.m. to do the body pump and all that good stuff. So it had very much become a part of my identity. And that was the point where I started to feel like I was losing myself a little bit in this process. And it scared me so badly. And I really just didn't know what to do about it. So I just sort of sat and was quiet. That was like my coping mechanism. I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think on this and I'm going to see if I can figure out what's going on here. And then, you know, lastly, of course, when you're in those circumstances, I didn't always make the best food choices, Shannon. In general, I think I'm pretty honest about the fact that in general, I don't always make the best food choices. I think that in general, I'm a fairly healthy eater, but I don't put as many restrictions on myself as I did in the beginning of my surgical process. It's interesting because my body has a weight that it likes to be at, and I'm not ashamed to tell you that my set point at this point is between 210 and 215. And that's a weight that, and I think my lowest weight was like 180. I almost immediately jumped back up to like 200, 205, and then 210. And then I swear I can eat like a fool or I can starve myself. And the only time in the last 5 years I've gotten under like significantly under 210 was the cancer. So it's like that's sort of where my body likes to be, even when I'm active and all that good stuff. So I try to just treat my body well in general. It's interesting because it's like my weight and my clothing size don't always match up in my head. My clothing size, I wear a size 12, 14. And in my head, I feel like I should probably wear like way bigger than that. But I think probably because of the exercise, I got a little bit of toning benefits in there. But yeah, I didn't always make the best food choices this year. But the interesting thing about this surgery is that if you learn to listen to your body, and that's one of those skills that I hammer home is listening to your body, because you're not always going to make the right decisions, but your body is always going to react to the decisions that you make. And if you learn to listen to those decisions and listen to those, what your body is telling you, a lot of times you'll notice that if you're eating crappy food, you start to feel like crap. And that's what happens to me is I'll go through this period of time where, like, Shannon, do you ever get, like, I get carved out, if you can believe it. Like, and that happens during the holidays too. It's like where I'm like, oh my God, if I see another starch, I'm going to kick somebody. Can somebody just please give me a big ass bowl of spinach, please?
Uh-huh.
So it's like, that's kind of the mode I'm in right now. I'm like, I just want some asparagus. So yeah, your body starts to tell you things. I especially learned about listening to my body after post-mastectomy, because after all of my surgeries, I would get voraciously hungry. It was like, pouch be damned, you are hungry. And that was my doctor was like, yeah, you need to eat like healthy food, but you need to eat because you're healing and it takes calories to heal. And so you need to do that. So learning to listen to your body is very, very important. And so I got to a point where I was just like, I don't even like this food I'm eating. I don't have food joy. I really would like to be eating better. I would really like for my body to feel better. Let's stop doing this now. It's basically like what happened. It's like one day I was like, let's just stop doing this. Let's just not do this anymore. So that's how that shook out for me. So that's sort of one of the things. And then the last thing, you may or may not have noticed this, but I sort of disconnected from my tribe. And when I say my tribe, I mean you guys. By far, this year was the least amount of blog posts I've done in the whole history of Bariatric Foodie. I wasn't involved, and Shannon can tell you because I will mess up her content schedule all up by just like posting random things, and she'll be like, "Wait, what? What did you do? Wait a minute." Yeah. And I wasn't doing that so much. I wasn't jumping in conversations. I wasn't, I wasn't reaching out. I wasn't, doing all of the things that sort of made, like, probably attracted a lot of you guys to Bariatric Foodie. I am so appreciative. If I try to say it very often to Shannon's face, but I am so appreciative for Shannon and the day that she came into my world, because of the fact that she is such a good representative and embodiment of Bariatric Foodie's values. And so if you didn't notice that I was more absent than usual, it is probably because Shannon just did that great of a job of keeping the ship steered forward. So thank you, Shannon.
You are.
But yeah, that was another way that affected. So let's talk about moving forward. Let's move forward because it's the last week of the year. And like I said last week, I am actually not opposed to New Year resolutions. A lot of people get attitudes about New Year resolutions. Like, I don't do New Year resolutions. I'm not opposed to New Year resolutions. I just feel like 99% of people do them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's me like making a bold statement. How do you do them wrong? You do them wrong because you start to there's a couple of things, and I don't want to go in too much length because we'll probably talk about this next week, but is number one, making your habits your sole goals. It's like habits are things that are meant to be. That's why it's called practicing habits, because you're not always going to practice a habit effectively. You're not always going to be successful at practicing a habit. You're going to backslide. You're going to slip. And so when that happens too often, we tend to say, hell with it. I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like a failure. As opposed to making some sort of goal that requires you to practice your habit. So if the habit you want to develop is physical activity, don't make physical activity your goal if you really, really struggle with it. No, sign up for the Tough Mudder or a 5K or a 10K, because you know what's going to get you across that finish line is becoming physically active and training for the damn thing. So, so things like that. And then also people like making these really big, lofty goals that just never freaking end. It's like, if you're making a New Year resolution, pick something that it's going to take you a year to do. There are things that it's going to take you a year to do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be food or exercise related. It could be stress related. It could be a project that you'd like to finish. It could be relationship related. But, I am not opposed to New Year resolutions. So some of my resolutions I'm going to put out there next week. But here's some general things that I plan to change in 2018. One of them is simplify. So the anxiety thing is not getting better. I have a therapist. I speak to her, and she was the one who pushed me. Like, why do you need to be doing all of these things? Maybe you need to just slow down and focus on yourself a little bit. I'm going to simplify in a lot of realms of my life. I am involved in a lot of things. With Bariatric Foodie, I'm on the board of the OAC and just all of these other things. And so I'm going to keep my commitments, and I want to do the things that are really important to me. But if anything new comes into my orbit, I'm really going to give it a good layer of scrutiny and thought. Is this worth my time? Is it going to stress me out? And if it's going to stress me out, why is it that I'm agreeing to do this? So simplify. Second thing is making that me time non-negotiable. We have so many other things that we consider non-negotiable that we won't even touch. Like if somebody just came up to you and said, you're not getting enough relaxation time, why don't you work fewer hours? You're not going to touch your work time because that's non-negotiable. I need to be working those hours. Well, my me time needs to be just as non-negotiable as my job or anything else. So that is going to be a general theme in 2018, is making my me time non-negotiable, and making sure that it happens. And it's interesting because I did that whole 12 days of fitness challenge before my surgery. Recap for anybody who's just joining us is that my local Y does 12 days of fitness. You go 12 days in December, you get a special t-shirt. I've always gotten the t-shirt every year since I had surgery. Well, this year I was having another surgery on December the 14th, and I wasn't sure whether or not I'd be able to go to the gym after, so I determined that I needed to do my 12 days of fitness by December 13th, which meant that I had one wiggle room day, which actually ended up being my birthday when I was really deathly ill, that I didn't go to the gym, got my t-shirt. But the thing that I realized in pushing through that goal is that if I'm determined enough, I can make me time. I was going before work. I was going after work. I was going late at night before it closed. I made the time and I did it. So there's no excuse for why. Non-negotiable. Nikki needs me time, and not just for exercise, but for relaxation and things too. And then lastly, every year I choose a word for the year that sort of indicates my, like, the direction that I want to go, what I want to work on, what I want to embody for the year. And so the word of the year for 2018 that I've picked is strong. I lost strength in a lot of realms after my surgery, and just in many realms of my life of being able to manage things in many of the ways that I've talked about tonight. And so my goal for this year is to do things that make me stronger physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. I want to be stronger. And so that's going to be a word you're going to hear from me a lot, and that's how I'm going to center and focus my goals. And speaking on centering and focusing my goals, I saw myself freeze there. Yep, I saw it. I saw you be live. I saw you. At least it was a decent face this time. But speaking of focusing in on my goals, I go through a pretty well-defined process of trying to determine what I want to accomplish for the year. And I've been sort of tweaking that in line with some of the things that I just told you about, like making goals that require me to use my habits rather than making the habits a goal and all those things. And so I thought that maybe it might be beneficial for you guys to, in solidarity with me, let's get ready for 2018 together. So I created a really, really short email challenge to help us think through our mindset and what we want to accomplish and what we want to do for 2018. And so if you would find it helpful to work alongside me, do the same things that I'm doing, go through some of those thought processes, or just see another way of thinking about those things, you can go to bariatricfoodie.com/get-ready-2018 and fill in your email address, and you will be put into a 5-part challenge. It's a 5-day challenge. You'll get an email from me each day with something to think through and something to do to get yourself ready and in the good mindset and really clear on what you want to be doing for 2018. I'm going to put this in the status message after this live is over so that you guys can go and sign up. But this is something that I created just in case it's helpful for you to have a framework of, sort of evaluating 2017 and making sure that 2018 goes in the direction that you want it to go in. So, like I said, I will put that link in the status message. Now, I'm going to put up the last call for questions as I scroll backward to see if there are any questions that we missed. I just turboed through all of my little Dr. Phil moment.
I know.
I know, Shannon. I was in the zone, man.
You did amazing.
Let's see. A lot of you guys are so sweet. A lot of you just sort of empathizing. Margaret asked, let's see. Margaret asked, how do you get through days when you are not hungry and everything makes you sick? During my cycle, this is a constant for 5 days. Oh my God, Margaret, you are my spirit sister. That happens to me. I see all these people talking about like they can eat everything but the kitchen sink during their cycle. And I am that one. I know, like, even before, I have an app that, it's called, like, it's the best app ever. It's called Flow. Ladies, it's called Flow, F-O-O-W. It's like a pink like square with like a white leaf on top. It's called Flow. And it's an app on my phone, and it tracks your cycle, but then you can also put your symptoms into day by day into there, and then it'll start to predict to you how you're going to feel that day. But then also like remedies, and pull like little helpful articles from the internet on how to deal with them and things like that. But even before I know, like, viscerally, like through the app or whatever, that time is coming around the bend, I wake up with the worst nausea, food aversion. It's like, I didn't get morning sickness when I was pregnant, but I'm pretty sure this is what morning sickness feels like. It's just horrible, and it lasts, and I was like, I get a migraine. It's just horrible. It's horrible, horrible. My advice to you, Margaret, and I'll let you chime in if you have anything, Shannon. My advice to you is, and I said this before and I'll say it again, the human body has mechanisms to compensate for when you can't eat. It's called fat. So not eating as much as you should is not necessarily an emergency. What is an emergency, now that's not to say, don't eat anything for days and days and days. That's probably not a good idea. But if you're not getting as much to eat for a few days and it's only temporary, it's probably not going to kill you. Where you do get in trouble is the body is not so well equipped to deal with a lack of fluids. So water, 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 water. Make sure you are getting your water. Be gentle to yourself if you need to do liquid nutrition, if you need to do broth, if you need to do a protein shake or a hot drink, do whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. But it's probably going to be okay if you can't eat as much as you usually do for those couple of days. And then believe me, your body usually bounces back when all of that is straightened out. Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Shannon?
Nope, just what you said. That's exactly my suggestion.
Yeah, so but thank you for saying that, because I thought I was like the weirdest person in the world, because it's like, it's horrible. So did I make that sound horrible? No, it's horrible. So
that was pretty
like zombie apocalypse horror. It's horrible. So, anyway, I don't see any other questions. Last call for questions for 2017, folks. 2017 is about to end. See, Anita said the same thing. She said she just rolls with it but keeps up with your fluids. That's a good plan.
Yep.
Last call for questions. I don't think anybody has any questions. So we are facing this new year. Like I said, bariatricfoodie.com/get ready 2018. If you'd like to go through a little Kickstarter challenge with me, I'm going to put that link in the status message next week. This time next week, guys, I don't want to alarm you, but this time next week, we are going to be in the sign-up period for the 2018 Bariatric Foodie Pledge. So next week, you guys, if you have never heard of the Bariatric Foodie Pledge, you want to tune in, because we're going to give you the start to finish 411 on what it is, because you're going to want to sign up, because you have the opportunity to win lots of cool stuff and to crush your most challenging goals and achieve more than you ever thought was possible. I've seen people achieve really great and inspiring things during the Bariatric Foodie Pledge, and I've seen lots of people win great stuff that motivated and inspired and delighted them. So it is a really big challenge. It's a really big contest. There is lots of prizes up for grabs for working on your goals and holding yourself accountable. So you want to know what the Bariatric Foodie Pledge is. And when we go through it next week, what I want you to do is I want you to sign up, and I want you to get all of your bariatric friends to sign up, because the more people we have each year for the pledge, the better sponsors I can attract each year for the pledge. We have I can't let it out of the bag right now, but we have, because usually we have the weekly sponsors of the weekly prize. It's a 4-week challenge, and there's a prize every week. There's prizes every week given out. 5 people win prizes every week for working on their goals and holding themselves accountable. But then if you participate all 4 weeks, you're eligible to win what's called the Winner Takes All Grand Prize, which is one of everything that was given out during the entire challenge. But we have one company that we really, really love. Shannon can attest, we really, really love this company, who is giving out the biggest prize that has ever been awarded in pledge history as a part of the grand prize. And you are going to want this. You are going to it's going to be like one of those things, like you're like, holy crap, let me get my goals together. Let me set reminders on my phone so that I get everything together and make sure that I am eligible to compete for this prize. So that's all I'm giving away. You're going to have to wait until next week. Next week, we're going to run down the sponsors. We're going to run down how the pledge works. We're going to talk all about it, and you're going to sign up for the pledge so that you can win wonderful prizes. And unfortunately, Shannon's not eligible to win prizes during the pledge. However, I ply her with gifts in other ways, so we'll be okay. But anyway, Shannon, I feel like I overshadowed you tonight. Did you feel like neglected?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
You did good with your emphatic nod, though.
Thank
Thank you
you
very much for letting me have my moment. But next week we are back. Happy New Year, guys, from Bariatric Foodie. And have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Happy New Year. Don't do anything we wouldn't do, which is only really a few things, but still. And have a great week, guys. Bye.
Bye.